No, I haven't.
It is now.
Okay. Kim, is there anything else you'd like to say about yourself?
Good afternoon, all. The one thing everybody knows, because I've started using it as a backdrop and it's got me some new clients. I am a local lapidary and jewelry designer, which I cut most of my stones and make my own jewelry. What most people don't remember is I do the things you as a business owner don't want to do, the things that give you a headache, the things your CPA doesn't have time to do. I balance a checkbook and I like it. Doesn't matter if it's mine or somebody else's. Seeing that zero and everything equals is a beautiful thing to me. So if you'd like that taken off your plate, call me. My info's in the chat. Kim Hanging Up Handwear. Still have gifts for those graduates. I ship anywhere.
Okay. You are truly a right and left brained woman. It seems like that's the case. Okay, and all of you know me, but I'll just, the thing I just would like to say is that Women Ties has into its 17th year, and part of what I've reactivated with my lovely loss of hair is my Women's Athletic Network. And so I've been doing adventures, and yesterday a woman who was 72 years old invited me to bike. She biked 100 kilometers on the Erie Canal. I joined her for the first 30. She continued on and went to Saratoga. I mean, you talk about rock star, and she's pedaling away and talking, and you know, I was tired last night, so I don't know how the heck she did it, the rest of it. But so if you have any kind of sports that you'd like to have me do with you, I am here. It's part of my new life goal of trying every sport once in my lifetime. So, and I'm just countering that with some of my business stuff as well. So just want to remind all of you. So, again, Renee, you might have missed this, but Monica was from Syracuse originally, and she used to attend events and she spoke a couple of times for us, but she is a serial entrepreneur and a program management leader. I'm now reading her bio, and a Wharton MBA and certified Scrum Master and product owner. She is the managing director of AIM Tech IT Services, LLC. And her passion is empowering teams and ensuring customer satisfaction. She is sought after as a leader in managing global product development teams and market expansion, and her corporate expertise includes positions in telecommunications, military electronics, automotive, and rail. So I'm going to turn this over to Monica, and when she's done speaking, I don't know, Monica, if you feel this way, we can wait and have questions and answers, or whether you'd like questions and answers kind of through the program, but we'll make sure that, you know, people can ask you questions.
I'm comfortable either way. If people want to stop me, I'm happy to do that. There is at least one natural break point, but it's just us, right?
Okay,
so, yeah. You know, you guys go ahead and raise your hand either electronically or physically. If I don't see you, Tracy will, and I'll be glad to jump in, you know, with your question.
Okay, terrific.
Okay.
Well, I will turn it over to Monica.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I am really excited. I was telling Tracy earlier that it didn't matter to me the turnout, because this is just an opportunity for me to plug back in with some women entrepreneurs. I moved to South Carolina almost 6 years ago now, and haven't really plugged in with a group here. So, and I'm always nostalgic about Syracuse. So, in fact, I'm going to be there for 4th of July weekend because, you know, I just want to try to get there once a year if I can do that. So, but just one additional data point. So as Tracy mentioned in the introduction, and thank you for that, I'm the managing director of AIM Tech IT Services. That came about because when I moved here to South Carolina, and I know my LinkedIn says Charlotte, that's because I'm wanting to get more attention for LinkedIn than Columbia, South Carolina. But I moved here to take a position with a different company in the rail industry. I left that job in 2020. It was the Lord's timing. I'm a person of faith. I didn't know, but it was right before my mom was gonna go to be with the Lord at the age of 99. And so it was really good timing because it meant I was able to devote more time when I could. Obviously it was during the lockdown in 2020, but I was able to see her several times before that happened. So, but I left because I wanted to go back to independent consulting. But in the interim, or while I was in that rail company, I built a great relationship and friendship with one of my colleagues who's in the UK. He left before I did, and he started his own IT services business. And we were talking about the idea of having that in the US. And so I'm leading that. So I'm just a couple of nuts and bolts here. So I'm driving that entirely. And what's happening is it's a separate US entity that I'm over. We currently have some of the IT support folks in the UK because all of that can be done remotely. And we're building the US team as we speak. So it's just pretty exciting. It's, I don't want to say my second act, it might be my third or fourth or fifth act, I've lost count. But for me, it's pretty exciting. So, but what you've got on the screen is the agenda. I would say you don't need to feel overwhelmed. You might see some of the slides we get into later that look like an opportunity to feel overwhelmed, but it's actually reference material for you to take on some of the tools. But the first part I want to focus on is the basic IT needs. And so we'll define those a little, talk about the considerations. When I did this presentation for an economic development council on the West Coast, I had a chance to do a survey ahead of time. And one of the top needs, of course, was data security. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Then we'll get into some of the online tools. If any of you have been in a corporate environment, and I'm sure you have, there are tons of tools available. What's interesting and what I learned, and I documented it because I learned it from myself, but I wanted to share it with other people, including my clients, is you can have your own support desk, IT help desk. How many of us have been in corporate America, had a problem with, hey, there's a file corrupted on my hard drive, let me enter a ticket, that kind of thing. So you've had access to remote support. And as it happens, that is what we do. We are that corporate help desk for you, among other things. And, I've got some again, considerations for how you address some of your IT needs and what you should look for in identifying a service provider. And then I've also included some of the references from some of the research that I did on the tool. So to start with, what you really want in terms of your IT strategy or your basic needs, you want to have a sense of your goals and your timeline. And I don't mean it's got to be well thought out, down to the micron, right? But you want to have an idea, even if it's very rough. A plan is not made in concrete, right? A plan is your roadmap, if you will, but realizing that it can change. But for instance, if you know that, or if your goal or your plan for your business is to add 5 employees in 2 years, you want to have an IT plan that kind of reflects that, right? Because you're going to have more people who need hardware, more people who are going to need IT support, and more people who are going to have access to your data. And as we'll talk more, there are aspects around those examples that ought to be managed. And, an IT service provider can manage them for you, or you do it on your own, whichever. But these are just considerations that frankly ought to be baked in, if you will, to your plan so that you're thinking about your IT needs going forward. So another piece of it is data storage, and data storage is not, it doesn't necessarily mean needing a massive amount of space unless you're an engineering practice that's got very complex drawings, or, for instance, if Kim, as a designer, you might have very complex drawings of your jewelry as you're designing it. So you might actually need more storage. So you just kind of want to understand that. We talked a little bit about data security and cyber protection. We'll get into more detail around that. I mentioned the help and the support desk. What I find as an entrepreneur, and before I started leading AIMTech IT services, I was doing my own consulting work. Most of us as business owners, it's a hassle if we start getting caught up in the admin stuff, right? And so to the extent that you can offload something like IT, where somebody else has to worry about it instead of you having to worry about it, that can be pretty helpful. You also don't want to get stymied by that corrupted file, or wait, what happened to that file? Or, gosh, my hard drive died. How do I get access to my data, right? So having a partner is helpful to help you think through those things and prevent some issues and resolve others that do crop up. Hardware selection, we've all been through that. What do I get? How much storage do I need? So on and so forth. Your software needs, the online tools. And if you're working with other people, file sharing and collaboration. And just a quick example. So one of our customers that we signed on was concerned because she was trying to get her contracts written. She and her business partner were kind of spinning their wheels a little bit, because it was, okay, I made these updates, you made these updates, trying to work from a common file. Well, there are tools that simplify that dramatically. And so I taught her how to use SharePoint. Frankly, I said, hey, dump this stuff into SharePoint, share that folder, that file with your business partner, and it's always going to be the most current version. So things like that are productivity drivers. So any questions so far? I'll just keep going. We good? Okay, very good. So I mentioned the IT goals and timeline. It's good to have, let's just say, a 2-year plan. And, again, maybe a better term is even a roadmap. And sometimes we use that term, but it's good to have a roadmap so you can kind of get ahead of it, because among other things, as you grow, you're going to need to understand how your costs may change, right? So you may say, I want to add 3 people or 4 people in 2 years or something like that. So you'll need to bake in the cost of the hardware or things like that. So even just from a cost standpoint, it's helpful, but it will also help you in deciding what tools to use. One example that I've run into in working with one client when we talked about customer relationship management tools, and we'll talk about that later. One person who was advising them had corporate experience with Salesforce. Well, guess what? For companies our size, Salesforce is a very expensive sledgehammer to crack a walnut, basically. If you ever watched what was going on with their stock price over the last couple of years, there's a reason that they're so expensive. Their stock prices skyrocketed. There are alternatives to that. So it's helpful to know what your goals are and your needs so you can pick the tools. Data storage, pretty straightforward, really just making sure that you can store and access and we'll say update and protect data, and most of it in the cloud. Frankly, having cloud access to your data is fantastic. It sounds perhaps to some people like I am joking when I say this, but I actually am really productive when I'm on the elliptical machine at 6 o'clock in the morning, because I can go on and go into Outlook, I can go on SharePoint, I can update a spreadsheet and save it. I can actually get some of my best work done on the elliptical, but it's because of the cloud. So, but also as we talked earlier, it's sharing and making sure it's safe and the most current version, and we'll also talk about access too. So data security, that leads right into that. So there are, you might hear the term or see the term RMM, and that stands for remote monitoring and management. And I like to put it in front of that, the word proactive. It simply means that a service provider, whether it's AIMTech or somebody else, when the person's not looking at your data, they're watching to make sure that patches are updating automatically. You know, how many of us have wanted to get something done on the laptop and you get the pop-up, oh, you need to update this. And it's like, oh my God, do I have to now? I don't have time. Running to a meeting. And then, you know, in my prior life, when I wasn't working in IT, you know, I'd go and look and say, oh, Windows has like, you know, 55,000 updates because I never took the time to do it. Well, the good news is that can be automated. And that's what remote monitoring and management does for you, making sure software updates, security patches are updated, making sure the data is flowing, and also understanding, okay, there, you know, if there's an issue, trying to prevent that, because if your data is, you know, if there's, for instance, if you're a larger company with servers, and if there's a server that has gone down, the service provider can actually recognize, okay, data is not being backed up properly, perhaps if it's just on a server, that kind of stuff. So, so I mentioned the help desk, support desk already. It's great to be able to make a phone call or preferably enter a ticket. You've heard the phrase enter a ticket. If you're, you know, if you're not familiar with it, you're just going onto an online portal saying, I've got this issue, firing that off. And then the way our company works, we track those tickets. Those get responded to. And in fact, you know, it's really exciting. Our problem resolution time is down to less than an hour. That's not the response time, that's resolving the issues. But having that kind of support can eliminate impediments for where your productivity is concerned. Hardware selection, you want to understand how much, you know, how much do I need to spend on this, you know, do I get the $99 Chromebook at Walmart, or do I get the $1,500 this at Best Buy? What's it giving me? How much space do I really need? I used the example earlier about whether you've got complex drawings that chew up a lot of data, those kinds of things. And we talked about file sharing and collaboration, SharePoint and other tools. So any questions? Are we good? Okay. So, you know, what I say and suggest is considerations and steps in addressing these needs is getting the input on these needs. And I really like the fact, Renee, you said, you know, sometimes I hire people to do this stuff. I'd like to understand some of it myself and be able to do some of it myself. You know, it sounds to me like you're getting input. And Kim, I'm imagining that you are too, and Tracy, I know you are. But it's important to know you don't have to figure this stuff out in a vacuum. But you just want to have a few, let's say, mile markers, if you will, for your journey, for your business. And you want to have mile markers like that for IT as well. But it's really sitting down and kind of understanding it, not, you know, saying, okay, I've got to lock myself in a room for 8 hours to figure it out. But even jotting them down as you think about this, as you say, okay, I need to hire my own fill in the blank marketing director. Okay, so what does that mean for IT? It's really being a little bit mindful, shall we say, about some of those things. Data storage, again, really getting input, getting recommendations on what you're going to need, what you might need. I think for many of us, the bias might be, look, I want to buy the cheapest thing out there. But, you know, my decision over the last X number of years has been, okay, I don't want to get the smallest amount of data storage because, you know, I want my laptop to grow with me, you know. It's kind of like, I remember how maybe years ago, when we were little, our folks would get the size clothes, it was one size a little bigger because they didn't want to have to ditch the ones as we got too big for them. It's a little bit like that. And of course, with the cloud, there are options around what amount of data storage you need. More data complexity, like with the drawing example, can drive greater needs. So the security, data security, obviously we're hearing about it. How many times is the Norton LifeLock commercial on, you know, on and on and on. But all of your data needs to be protected. One, you know, and so that means, and we'll get into a lot of detail about that, or, you know, a sufficient amount of detail about that. But that's important just for the sake of your business. It's also important for the sake of your clients, whose needs might become more complex if, for instance, you're dealing with government or health data. As you know, Renee, I'm sure you've had to deal with this with HIPAA, right? So, and then where the help and support desk is concerned in figuring out whether you need that, really understand the impact on your business if you have to do it all yourself, or if there's an event that kind of sidelines you temporarily. How easy is it going to be for you to resolve it on your own? Do you have an internal group? Do you have somebody who can help? You know, Renee, you mentioned that before. So really understanding the risk and the impact on your business is a key factor in determining how much help desk support you want to get. Hardware selection, we kind of talked about that. There's processing capacity, there's the hard disk space, there's RAM, but also you think in terms of, okay, how old is my computer? We have a client who we actually worked really a long time with her to kind of improve her capacity, because there were some things that could be done to fix it so that she wasn't using such a high percentage of her available capacity. Even with that, though, we ended up making the recommendation eventually, you know, after a few months, because her computer was still working slowly, to upgrade. And actually it was, you know, as a matter of age, as we know, computers and what's available is improving exponentially with time, right? So it was, her machine was actually outdated, and she's really happy with the new machine she's got. And then, of course, we've talked about the tools, which we'll talk about some more. So those are some things about addressing IT needs. Are we good so far? We're ready to go into a little more on cybersecurity. So this slide is actually representative of what the CIA uses as a framework around data security. So 3 aspects to consider. And there's no rocket science here. We've all experienced it. It's just, this is a framework to think about it. So confidentiality, we want to make sure that our data is not being viewed, not accessed by people that have no business looking into it. The integrity of the data, and that can be as simple as saying, have I got the most current version of my contracts in there? And are my people who are working on contracts using the most current information, like the example we talked about earlier? So it's accuracy and trustworthiness of that data. And then the final thing is availability. If you're working, excuse me, if you have a team of people, do the right people have the right access to the right data? The example I used to use, and I want to just give this disclaimer, and maybe it's just because I'm getting older and I'm thinking about my parents because they've passed on. My dad was a janitor, so no disrespect to janitors, but I can guarantee you that the janitor at the rail company where I work did not have access to profit and loss data, right? And even if somebody had access to certain profit and loss data, it would be for their business line, let's say, not a different business line. So it's key to make sure that the right people are accessing the data. You want to make sure if somebody new comes on the team, they get access, but to the right data. If they leave, you want to make sure their email is no longer functioning. They no longer have access. You also want to manage the hardware. If it's a company that's got enough folks where you're providing as a company a piece of hardware to each team member, when they leave, somebody needs to be managing, and it's called asset management, basically. So, so in a sense, that's not just the data, but also the hardware. And I've got the link on the bottom of the screen there for that slide specifically. So how do we address that? Protect access by defining who needs what and when and for how long. And you also apply, and we've seen this if you've ordered on Amazon, two-factor authentication, right? Where, okay, Monica, you're logging in, you're about to place an order, but or no, I want to see my account information. I log in and they say we want to send a code to your phone. That is two-step or two-factor authentication. Microsoft has that. There are other things you can do. I end up having to do that when I log into QuickBooks. Integrity, like we talked about, making sure the data is current. So we've, don't really need to reiterate that, but you get the idea. And having a tool that'll help you do that, as opposed to I've got this version on my thumb drive. Well, that person's got that version on their thumb drive. You want to have centralization to support. And so the cloud is doing that job. And then the availability, accessibility, making sure people can access it. Again, there's the cloud, but also for perhaps larger organizations, and not even larger organizations necessarily, the cloud also provides some redundancy, right? I mean, if you're getting on a flight, or if I'm getting on a flight and I want to work on a file, I might have it on my hard drive because I don't want to pay the airline for Wi-Fi, or it's not even an option on that flight. But I've got that version, but I've got the cloud version. Now, it's up to me to make sure that I upload the most current one once I get off the plane. But in a sense, the cloud provides redundancy. There is also the opportunity for recovery. And so that's something that a service provider can actually help manage. We talked about proactive remote monitoring and management to mitigate risks and issues, gave you a few examples of that. And another key thing, and it's funny because, Tracy, you said if we get interrupted by the weather, there might be an issue. Some people some companies are larger, they have their own servers. What happens if there was a power failure? What happens if there's something more catastrophic? So it's good to have plans around that. I personally don't have that issue because I don't have a server, but those are things to think about again as you grow. So it's another consideration as you're executing your growth plan for your business. So this is one really good place to pause. Any questions? And, feel free to unmute, and I'm just going to check the chat too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you were just reminding me of the Labor Day storm here, and being home-based, which I am, we didn't have electric here for 5 days.
Wow.
So, back then, because that was 1999 or something. But I mean, you don't think about the fact, especially probably where you are too, Monica, where if you had a hurricane or natural disasters that really could cut it out, how would you continue to work for that period of time?
Right.
So that's what
Right.
it reminded me of when you said that.
I mean, I don't have servers, but I do have it used to be a Black & Decker storm station. Now I forgot whose brand I've got, right? Long enough to be able to plug in my phone. I mean, most of us, or a lot of us anyway, aren't even using landlines anymore.
Right.
So we're totally relying on being able to have a cell phone charged. I guess I could always get in the car if I had to. I didn't think about that. That's not a bad idea. A backup is a backup, right? It doesn't have to be elegant, but again, as your company grows, the needs might change. So,
right.
So let's talk about the tools then. Let me click the right screen so I can advance. There we go. So customer relationship management, oh, you've got your hand raised, Kim?
Yeah, just a quick question because I know everybody's company is different. I work with a lot of mom and pop type businesses. Do you sit down with a company, do an initial evaluation to what a company would need? Because not everybody does that.
Yes, we do. And I'm so glad you should be in my marketing team because that's what I forgot to mention. I will be happy to, and Tracy, if you want to extend this to other Women Ties members, even if they weren't able to join us today, I would be happy to do a complimentary strategic IT assessment. It's really me interviewing and understanding the needs and helping people kind of get that vision, right? Most of us know this information, but we need to actually have it corralled so we can have a plan. And so, yes, we definitely do that. And I'm offering, to the Women Ties community to do that. So. Good, Kim? All set? Okay, great. Okay, so customer relationship management, CRM. It's funny, for a while when I wasn't kind of plugged into that in particular, it was just one of these terms that was out there. Now it's more obvious to me why it matters. And basically it is, what are you using to manage your customer information, your contact list? When was the last time you reached out to them? Oh, gee, I called them and they asked me to follow up with an email with information, so maybe not just customers, but prospects. So there are lots of tools out there. And this is like it's not the parental guidance warning like the movie, but just a warning. The next slide you will see will look very involved, but it's okay. We'll talk through it. I'm just, I feel compelled to say that because we were all taught, don't put eye charts in presentations. Well, this one, we need this information. So, but the point is, there are tons and tons and tons of tools out there. So I've tried to actually summarize by feature and cost roughly so you can get an idea. The same with financial and accounting tools, also known as FinTech. And most of us are using some form of this. There's PayPal, you go to lunch with somebody and they pick up you don't have your credit card and they say, well, we'll split it, no problem. I'll send you some money via Zelle. All of those kinds of tools, QuickBooks, Wave, Xero, there's a bunch of them out there. And I almost got, almost went blind trying to find all the information. And you have to be careful because you need your scuba gear. There's so much stuff out there. So that's why I decided to create these charts, because I figured it could help somebody besides me. So for customer relationship management tools, these are only a few, trust me. I do include some website references and links to one or two articles because let's see, there was, where it says SaaS worthy comparison, that was a website that provided some input. And so I tried to put it in a table. So on the left column is, okay, these different attributes. Do they have a free version, a free trial, call logging, contact management, on and on and on, not an exhaustive list. And so it's just pretty clear, yes or no for these tools that I just decided to focus on, and the approximate cost. We're using Fresh Sales for AimTech, and it works pretty well. There's like I mentioned there's a fee per user, but there's actually an interesting range. I mean, anywhere from $0 to $69 a month. Now, I put this together a few months ago, so those numbers might have changed, but that's roughly the range that I found. Again, we're using Fresh Sales. I mentioned earlier, all these yeses for Salesforce, but look at the price, right? Big difference in terms of the license price. and again, very expensive sledgehammer to crack a walnut, depending on the size of your business. That said, there are massive companies that actually need more. So I don't happen to be one of them. So that's one page. Then mentioning the fintech tools. I looked at FreshBooks, QuickBooks, Xero, and Wave, and just kind of it's not that important, but you might, so I've mentioned Fresh Sales, there's FreshBooks, you'll hear FreshWorks, there's Fresh Service, it's all part of a suite. So interestingly enough, we use, I think it's Fresh Service is what we use to track our customer tickets that they enter. And we're also able to see the performance of every member of the tech team to see, okay, who's really crushing it, who needs maybe some more training. And that's how I'm able to quote that we are doing a resolution time of under an hour. So you can see who's got a free trial and who doesn't, just so you know, QuickBooks free trial or a 3-month discount, but not both. Personally, when I started just doing my consulting almost 2 years ago, I went with Wave because again, I can do stuff on my phone when I'm in the gym. I can send an invoice when I'm in the gym on the elliptical machine. I like that kind of thing because the apps are handy. You can put it on your phone. There's accounting and invoicing are free for Wave, which is very cool. And it looks really nice. You can put your logo in the invoice, all that sort of thing. So, you know, if you're thinking about something, or if you know somebody who's just starting out, maybe they're just doing some consulting to start like I was, and they don't need a lot of infrastructure. Wave's a great tool. That's what I'm doing for my consulting business, but for AIM Tech right now, I've been doing QuickBooks, but I'm going to switch over to Xero because the folks in the UK are also using Xero for the UK side of the business. And it happens that the person, they've got somebody doing their bookkeeping who's going to liberate me from mine. And it's easier if they use Xero. So I'm like, I'm all in. So free trial, yes or no plans, and these things vary, right? And you have to look at what features are there for which plans. Pricing, number of users, QuickBooks, I think I can have up to 3 users before I have to pay with the plan that I have. I think it's the essentials. I don't remember about Xero, but I know that the team in the UK will take care of that. And then I think we might be up to my next, yes, so let's see. Oh no, more features, hold on, sorry. So more features on FinTech. You can read that at your leisure because you're going to get the slides. But at the bottom, I've got who it's best for. So FreshBooks, service-based businesses, QuickBooks, product and sales, Xero. And this is really based on one of the articles I found. It's not my personal opinion necessarily, just what I read. So now I can get to the slide I was really excited about. What integrates with what? What is going to make my life easier? So my personal favorite around all of this, it's got nothing to do with FinTech or CRM, is the fact that I can use Calendly with my Outlook. And so I have figured out how to not have to look at this calendar and this calendar. I've got my AIM Tech email with Calendly. And then what I do is I also have a Gmail account for the business, and I invite the Gmail account so that I can see dentist, hair appointment, meet with prospects. I can see all of that in one place. So I'm just thrilled to pieces with that. But what's key is a lot of these things do integrate. So for instance, I'll talk about QuickBooks again. So it does integrate with Fresh Sales. Now integrating, you have to go through whatever steps it is to link these things. I also want to repeat the word, this is the phrase, not an exhaustive list. I needed my scuba gear when I started looking to see how many apps there are that Fresh Sales integrates with, or QuickBooks. So it's just a portion of what the integrations are. Let me see, there was another one. Wave integrates with HubSpot, which is another prominent CRM tool. What's another one of interest? Outlook and Calendly. So, and there's I think for, let's see, what do we have here? Salesforce and DocuSign integrate, but there's also, I think, an integration with Outlook for DocuSign now, which I think is kind of cool. So, but anyway, you can look at this at your leisure. My suggestion might be helpful if you have an accountant doing some of your work for you, find out what their preference is, because for instance, with QuickBooks, I was going to work with a certain accountant and decided I don't need to, but I remember he said, oh, you can make me a a user that won't count against your quota, basically. So those kinds of things might matter to you. You decide. Determine the importance of live support, especially on, actually CRM and accounting, because it varies depending on your plan. If you feel like you need 24/7 support, it might cost you more with the platinum plan versus the bronze plan or something. And I mentioned Wave, and take advantage of the free trials and so forth. Last, so I guess I've probably already done a lot of shameful pitches, so why stop now? But it is important, I think, and it depends on, I guess, where you are in your business cycle, right? But I would say, as far as having somebody to support you, having an IT service provider, as we like to say for AIM Tech, we take care of the IT. We worry about the IT so you don't have to. I know that sounds kind of like the scrubbing bubbles thing. We work hard so you don't have to. But we actually do solve that problem. I mean, I remember the concerns that this one customer had before she started with us. And now I never hear from her, except for the fact that, we talk about other things because we've known each other 20 some years, which means we've taken care of her productivity issues. We've taken care of her IT issues. If anything, once in a while, I book time on her calendar just to double check, make sure things are good. So to me, it's the value of having somebody else. You're farming that part of your brain share out to somebody else. That mental bandwidth doesn't have to get allocated to that particular admin thing. But also all the things we talked about before, having somebody who can help you determine the goals and the timeline. How is your IT going to support your business as it grows? You don't want the business supporting your IT. You want the IT supporting your business. People can, and a support provider can provide input about the data storage. We can do the remote maintenance and monitoring like we talked about to make sure that you're not getting unnecessary disruptions because updates are happening automatically. Being there, having somebody who's empathetic, who recognizes, okay, this issue you've got right now might be stopping you from signing up a new customer, or, I'm trying to get this done before I go get a flight or something like that. It's important to have somebody who can empathize with that. We talked about the hardware selection, having the input on that, and also connecting you with the right tools. So again, having a support provider means they're focusing on those needs so you don't have to. So last thing, I mentioned some links to different articles, and thank you. My contact information is there. You're going to get this deck. Be delighted to be connected to you on LinkedIn. If you want to do a follow-up, you can book my Calendly link and book a time that's convenient for you. And we've got our website, and I still have my 315 area code mobile phone, not giving it up. So, yeah. Oh, I love that. So that's it. I hope I've given you a chance to ask questions. I'm going to stop sharing just for a minute so I can easily look at the chat. Okay, the chat's empty. So, we do have some time. I have time if you need a little extra time. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for going through it. What these type of seminars do for me is they make me think of things that I really don't spend a lot of time thinking of in terms of media. And that could be because I'm a solo woman entrepreneur. Like I know Renee, Kim and Renee probably have more IT needs coming up just by what they naturally do. But I forget about some of this stuff. I mean, that's why I liked offering the program, because it makes you think about parts of your business you might not necessarily pay a lot of attention to. And I started as a computer science major at SUNY Oswego, and I took it for 1 year and I was like, oh my God, I don't know it. So, anything I've ever learned about computer science or computers has been just through learning, where having the IT support, I think especially if I was at a stage where I was growing, would be something that would be really important. So I just wanted to thank you for bringing up some of the subject just to get us thinking. But
Happy to do it.
yeah, Kim and Renee, do you want to unmute and ask some questions? So I know both of you, I know you both well, so I'm thinking you have some questions. Do I need to unmute? No, there goes Renee. She's unmuted.
Yeah. So thank you, Monica. This was very helpful to have a greater understanding of the IT needs to be thinking about and considering and how it works with the business. But one of the things I often think about is the confidentiality piece, obviously with being held to HIPAA, which is really important. And I often wonder, I do have my own EHR, which is all HIPAA compliant, the electronic health records. But I also have other means of communication with patients, and there's email, and there's my own. I work on several devices. I have a laptop, a desktop, a tablet, my phone. Because I do go between more than one office, and it's always a question of, with multiple devices and with the cloud, really how secure is that, and what are things to take into consideration regarding that. And it could just be my lack of understanding and knowing that these software things that I use really are HIPAA compliant. But then there's email too. Things like that.
Right.
With that type of guidance, I'm not, sometimes I'm not sure what to take into consideration, or should I always be using the app on my phone, or just the information in my office? I don't know.
It's a really good question. And before I would even dare to try to answer that, I personally would probably go look online and see, what does HIPAA stipulate? You know what I mean? We know they're not supposed to share it. They're not supposed to sell it, et cetera. As a healthcare consumer, that's the part I know. But what do they say about, okay, it's got to be, do they put stipulations around how you use the cloud, right? I don't know any of that, and it's interesting because as a healthcare consumer, I think I kind of want to know now that you've raised the question, now that I'm in the IT world. So,
and I know that, we do have a state association of acupuncturists that provides a lot of that guidance for us. And we just, what's most important is the EHR that we use is HIPAA compliant and protected. And during the start of the pandemic, when we were doing more the telehealth, there was a lot of questions around that. And then our software company started embedding HIPAA compliant telehealth into our EHR system, which took away a lot of those questions. So that software that I'm using, I'm just making sure that they're HIPAA compliant pretty much. Gotcha. And any sort of communication that I'm using.
One thing that I know I can do, because, as you've said, how confidential is it, what's in the cloud? So there are standards that blessedly we adhere to. I'm fortunate to be working on a business with a partner who's got the other half of the business in a country that is much more stringent from the standpoint of protecting consumers, right? I mean, companies get away with stuff in the US that they wouldn't get away with in the UK. So what I will do is I can ask him that question, okay, what are the standards? What are the requirements to ensure confidentiality so that when I go out and make these sales calls and say, oh, your stuff is safe in the cloud, I'm not lying, right? And there are standards around that. And we're following, in the US, we're going to follow the more stringent standards, partly, and, again, as I mentioned earlier, our tech team right now is the UK tech team, but, we have a plan in place and we have the capability in place to address US business needs during the regular business hours, and we're staffing up on the US side. But we're going to follow what we know is going to be in the best interest of the customer. So, but I will ask that question and I can get back to you. And I've got your name. I can go ahead and reach out to you on LinkedIn, Renee, if you like.
And Monica, I didn't have your
I'm there.
email address, but if I had your email address, we have a sales contact list. I can send you Renee's information.
Okay.
Unless Renee wants to share
Okay,
it now.
great.
Whatever works.
And that's fine. And what I can do is I can just go ahead and, whatever questions we've got, consolidate, and then you can send all the answers to the group. Okay, great. Is that good for you, Renee?
Sounds great.
Okay.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
Kim, do you have any?
There's a lot of things in your world, Monica, that are like things in my world. People know what they know and they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
I always joke with people, and for some businesses, yes, the free stuff online is good, but they know what they know, and what they don't know hurts them. Because like you said, when they go to the CPA, they can't do what they need to do, or goodness gracious, somebody's accessed their stuff and now they have their private confidential designs of whatever it is, be it a package they were working for somebody that was great in terms of marketing, doesn't matter what it is. Now that's out there and they might be sharing it on the World Wide Web with everybody they know. And that was your program that you spent 10 years developing, and now it's out there because you went with the cheapest thing you could find, and
Right.
it didn't have really good safeguards, and you don't know.
And I saw your post in the chat too about the person that, their computer died and they lost a ton of work. Wow, that's heartbreaking. I mean, how many of us have just worked on a spreadsheet and something happened right before we clicked save? And, in just a few hours of lost, and we're apoplectic. The person you talked about lost, sounds like a couple years worth of work.
Multimedia artist. She started out poet and writer and went into multimedia. So she was taking pictures and bringing them home onto her machine and manipulating the images and printing them on fabric and other things, and had exhibits in galleries and was selling those goods out. So I just suggested to her, geez, you've got these things that you've manufactured for people. So at least there's a few of your things that are out there that people have ordered. Contact the places you had the stuff done, tell them what happened, and maybe for $5 or whatever, they'll spend the time and send you back your files, because everybody's got redundant backups. If you come to them again and it's 6 months later, they're not going to want a new file. They're going to go back into their stuff and pull out your old file.
Right.
But yeah,
Well,
it's always horrible to hear the horror stories like that. But another one was a finance thing. But again, it's only as good as the people believe it needs to be. It happened to be a QuickBooks horror story. I still swear by QuickBooks Desktop. I have clients I work with that are on the online, and they've since changed the online. But 5 years ago, you couldn't do your own QuickBooks backup to something that you could take somewhere, or it had to go to QuickBooks. It's the only way they allowed it, and they did it on a regular basis, and you had no control over it. And worked for a company, and they lost everything because of a data integrity problem. And QuickBooks wanted $300 to start to look into it. and they were paying a lot for the QuickBooks, and QuickBooks wouldn't help them. So we moved to desktop. It was a 6-week project. I did as much of the recovery as possible. It happened before I got there, but you know, being able to take whatever you have and being able to separately back it up from anything that anybody hands you is vital, and I recommend it in any field. You know, online is great, but if you can't do a separate backup and save it somewhere, that's hard.
Right, you're preaching to the choir about QuickBooks. I found it out when I went to do our taxes, because you can't transfer data from QuickBooks Online directly to TurboTax. You have to download it to a desktop version. And I mean, you know, I'm harboring a grudge, frankly, because I'm like, wait a minute, you know, I'm 20-year customer with Intuit, and I thought, okay, the bloom is off the rose, guys.
And it says they integrate too. That's the worst part. It says it integrates. It just doesn't say that it's only through this module, and if you have to pay for something after.
It would be like if you were trying to drive from Syracuse to Watertown and thought, oh, I can take Route 81. And instead you find out, no, I've got to get off in 3 exits and drive Route 11, 45 or 50 miles worth. You know,
They're done that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, that's the analogy. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's really kind of reinforces the need for me to get the answer that I want to get for you, Renee. Because it underlines everything, right? I mean, you know, the cloud is awesome, but how many of us have that 5% in the back of our mind? My God, what am I doing? Am I, you know? And so I'm going to get that answer, and we'll share that. Because you know, I mean, from my perspective, even just trying to make customers or prospects feel comfortable, because a ton of stuff is on the cloud. We know that. But some of us are still a little old school, right? Or solopreneurs. And it's like, I would still like to be, you know, have that additional information to bolster my decision to be on the cloud. I know it's invaluable. I feel really confident, but I'd like to be able to articulate it better. So I will look that up and share that.
Renee,
Thank you.
do you have any other questions, Renee? Or I was
I'm all set. This was great.
okay.
Okay,
you.
wonderful, thank you. And like I said, I'll be happy to do the complimentary assessment. And Tracy, if you find that other people say, oh my God, I should have been on it, are you going to offer it again? It's not, you know, no big commitment on my part. I'd be happy to give it again if you found that that would be helpful to people.
Yeah, the other thing I could do too, because we did have a few women that were interested but couldn't make the date and time. You never know which month, and you know, is June busier than any other one, but sometimes I can put the event on for another like 2 weeks. And if somebody wants to pay for the recording, then they would get all of this information and know that you're offering that. So I can do that and see if it garners any more visibility or sales for you. And I would forward you the contact name of the women that then pay for that, so that you're aware, so you can make contact with them.
That sounds great.
Is that okay?
Well, thank you again for spending your afternoon with me. The PDF will be on its way to you via Tracy. And thank you, Tracy, for setting it up. I'm super glad that we all persevered. I've had a fun time.
Yeah, it's been so good to see you. That's what I love. I love that with Women Ties. I know names of women that have been involved with us, because it never matters to me if somebody's, you know, they can come back into my fold. I'm happy about it. I'm usually very excited. So, and then I love seeing my regulars, like my Rochester girls, who are usually the only. I should just move to Rochester, because I swear they're the only girls that ever show up there.
Love you.
We love you, Tracy.
Yeah, from what Tracy said, you guys are rocking. And I've got the website too.
I speak the highest of Rochester women of anybody, no matter where I am. Some younger girl was just moving to Rochester. I was like, oh, I love the women there. Oh, call me if you need any contacts for anything in any area. So yeah, I'm kind of a Rochester fan based on the women that I know.
Yeah.
Oh,
wow.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm going to look at the website. I'm excited.
Well,
So everyone have a great rest of the day, and thanks again, Tracy, for the opportunity.
yeah, and my last thing, just to my two girls on this,
Yep.
is that the next Women Ties member only meeting is not going to be July 2nd, since it's the middle of 4th of July weekend. I moved it to July 6th, which is a Wednesday, which still is during that holiday week, but that's the date that we'll use. And if either of you probably don't have events, but if you have July or August or September events you want me to promote, please send it to me and I will put them on our
I
website.
forgot, I should have sent you my Pride promotion.
Yeah, you should. That's what people remind.
It's not too late, though.
I send out information on all of you. I need your information so I can send it out. So,
Tracy,
not
we
too
forget,
late,
we get
though.
so caught up in the day-to-day, we
I
forget.
know. Well, I'm
It's
hoping
not
to
too
do,
late. It's
yeah, I'm
only 2
hoping
weeks.
to do more one-on-one phone calls to remind people. So that's something new I'll be doing. So thank you, Monica. Can we give her a round of
Thank you.
applause?
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim and
Appreciate
Renee.
it.
Thanks for joining me, and Monica will stay in touch, and let me know if I'll send you the sales contact list too, so you have that.
Okay, great.
All right.
And prosperity to everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.